The Alchemist, a life-changing story for everyone. Just imagine, what if a recurring dream wasn't just a fantasy, but a secret map to the most important treasure of your life? And what if ignoring it meant your soul would slowly wither away, leaving you a ghost in your own story? This is the danger that a young shepherd named Santiago is about to face. The sun was a familiar, gentle warmth on Santiago's back, a companion as reliable as the sheep he led through the rolling hills of Andalus. For 2 years, this had been his life. A wanderer with a flock. He knew the good pastures, the hidden streams, and the villages where the merchants' daughters admired a young shepherd's freedom. He carried a jacket, a wineskin, and a book thick and heavy, but he could trade it for another whenever he finished. This was his chosen path, a rebellion against his parents' dream of a priestly life, a compromise between their world of books and his own yearning for the open country. But lately, a different companion had begun to haunt him. A dream. It was always the same. He was in the field with his sheep when a child appeared, took his hand, and led him to the Egyptian pyramids. There, with the immense stone triangles glowing in the moonlight, the child would say, "If you come here, you will find a hidden treasure." Then, just as the child was about to reveal the exact location, Santiago would wake up, his heart pounding with a mixture of exhilaration and loss. He had dismissed it, as one dismisses any strange dream. But it returned again and again with the persistence of a creditor. On this particular day, his wanderings had brought him to a dilapidated church where a giant sycamore tree had grown through the ruined roof, a symbol of nature reclaiming man's ambition. It was a peaceful place for him and his sheep. As night fell, he resolved to sleep beneath that tree and see if the dream would return. It did, more vivid than ever. This time, he felt the coolness of the child's hand, the gritty sand beneath his feet, and the awe-inspiring silhouette of the pyramids against a star-dusted sky. He woke with a start, the word treasure echoing in his mind. The air felt different, charged with possibility. Annoyed and intrigued, he decided to take his flock to the nearby town of Tarifa. There was an old woman there, a gypsy, who was said to interpret dreams. Perhaps a few coins would buy him peace. The gypsy's home was dark, smelling of smoke and dried herbs. She listened to his dream with tired eyes, her fingers absently stroking the head of a black cat. When he finished, she leaned forward, her gaze suddenly sharp and intense. "This is a dream in the language of the world," she said, her voice a low rasp. "It is true. You must go to the pyramids." Santiago's heart leapt, but then he scoffed. "And what will I find there?" "Treasure," she said simply, "the kind that makes kings envious." A cynical smile touched his lips. "And for this priceless information, what is your fee?" She leaned closer. "I will not charge you now, but you must swear to me, on whatever you hold sacred, that if you find this treasure, you will give me 1/10 of it." The demand was so bold, so certain, that it shook him. She believed in the dream more than he did. He agreed, laughing it off as a strange morning's entertainment, and left, convinced he would never see her again. To clear his head, he sat in the town square, reading his book. An old man, dressed in a simple yet regal manner, sat beside him and struck up a conversation. He seemed unusually interested in Santiago's life as a shepherd. Emboldened by a strange need to confide, Santiago told him about the dream and the gypsy woman. The old man smiled. "And so, why have you not gone to Egypt?" "Because I am a shepherd. My sheep depend on me. It's a journey across a continent. It's impossible." "Nothing is impossible. Once a person has truly decided to do it, the old man replied calmly. Then he revealed something that stole the breath from Santiago's lungs. He was Melchizedek, the king of Salem. He carried with him a heavy gold breastplate, studded with precious stones, which he kept hidden in his cloak as proof. The world is governed by one great truth, Melchizedek said, his voice dropping to a whisper. It's called the principle of favorability, or beginner's luck. It says that when you truly desire something with all your heart, the entire universe will conspire to help you achieve it. But it only works if you are pursuing your personal legend. Personal legend? Santiago asked, captivated. It is what you have always wanted to accomplish. Everyone, when they are young, knows what their personal legend is. At that point in their lives, everything is clear and everything is possible. They are not afraid to dream. But as time passes, a mysterious force begins to convince them that it will be impossible for them to achieve their personal legend. It is a force that appears to be negative, but actually shows you how to realize your destiny. It prepares your spirit and your will, because there is one great truth on this planet. Whoever you are, or whatever it is that you do, when you really want something, it's because that desire originated in the soul of the universe. It is your mission on Earth. Santiago felt these words resonate in the deepest part of his being. They were keys unlocking a door he had forgotten was there. To prove his point, Melchizedek told a story. A wise man sent his son to learn the secret of happiness from the wisest man in the world. The boy wandered for 40 days until he reached a beautiful castle atop a mountain. There, he found a place of immense activity. Merchants, musicians, warriors, a cacophony of life. In the center of it all, the wise man listened to everyone. The boy had to wait for 2 hours. When it was his turn, the wise man listened, but said he did not have time to explain the secret of happiness just then. Instead, he asked the boy to explore the palace and return in 2 hours. But, said the wise man, handing him a teaspoon holding 2 drops of oil, as you wander, carry this spoon without spilling a single drop. The boy, tense and focused, climbed up and down countless staircases, his eyes fixed on the spoon. After 2 hours, he returned, not having seen a single thing in the palace. So, asked the wise man, where are the tapestries, the gardens, the libraries? The boy was embarrassed. He had seen nothing. The secret of happiness, the wise man said, is to see all the marvels of the world and never to forget the drops of oil on the spoon. Melchizedek looked at Santiago. You are like that boy. You are so concerned with your pure drops of oil that you are missing the marvels of the world, the call of your personal legend. He then offered Santiago a deal. He would tell him how to find the treasure in Egypt if Santiago gave him 1/10 of his sheep. It was a brutal price. His sheep were his livelihood, his companions, his identity. Torn between the safe, known world and the terrifying, alluring call of the unknown, Santiago spent a night of agonizing indecision. He thought of the merchant's daughters, the predictable seasons, the simple language of sheep, and then he thought of the pyramids, of a destiny unlived, of a soul slowly numbing to sleep. The next morning, with a heart pounding with both terror and exhilaration, he found He gave him 10% of his flock. In return, the king of Salem gave him 2 stones, one black, one white, called Urim and Thummim. They will help you read the omens, he said. And remember, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Santiago, now a shepherd no more, sold his remaining flock. With the money in his pouch and the 2 stones in his pocket, He boarded a ship to Africa. As the Spanish coast faded into the haze, he felt a profound loneliness. He was on his way. The adventure, and the first true test of his faith, had begun. Think for a while? Have you ever been stranded in a foreign land? Betrayed, penniless, and utterly alone? In that moment of absolute zero, you are presented with a choice: to curse your misfortune and retreat, or to see it as the universe's brutal way of teaching you how to build a new life from the ashes of the old. The port of Tangier was a sensory assault. The air was thick with the smells of spices, salt, and animals. Men in long jalebas shouted in a language that was a chaotic music to Santiago's ears. He was adrift in a sea of unfamiliar faces. He had never felt so isolated. A young man, about his age, approached him. He spoke Spanish. Relief flooded through Santiago. Here was a friend, a guide. The boy offered to take him to a marketplace and help him get a caravan to Egypt. Trusting, his heart full of beginner's luck, Santiago agreed. They went to a crowded market, and the boy said he would need to buy camels. It was expensive. In a moment of foolish trust, Santiago handed over his entire purse of money. "Wait here," the boy said. "I will be right back." Santiago waited. An hour passed. Then two. The sun began to set, and the market emptied. The reality of his situation crashed down upon him like a physical blow. He had been betrayed. He was in a foreign country without a single peseta to his name, unable to speak the language. The treasure, the personal legend, the king of Salamato, seemed like a cruel, distant joke. He was not a seeker of destiny. He was a fool, he felt, for the stones in his pocket. Urim and Thummim were still there. A bitter laugh escaped him. What good were stones against starvation? He thought of his sheep, the predictable life he had so willingly abandoned. A wave of self-pity and despair threatened to drown him. He could work his way onto a ship back to Spain, become a shepherd again. It was the sensible thing to do. But as he sat there on the cold ground, a strange thought occurred to him. He was so much worse off than he had been as a shepherd. Yet he had two choices: to see himself as the poor victim of a thief, or to see himself as an adventurer in whom the universe was testing its mettle. It was a moment of profound alchemy, the choice to transform a disaster into a challenge. He looked around. He was in front of a crystal shop. The windows were dirty, the displays uninspiring. The shop was empty of customers, a metaphor for his own empty purse. An idea, fragile as the crystal inside, began to form. He entered the shop. The owner, a heavy-set man with sad eyes, looked at him with suspicion. Using gestures and the few words of Arabic he had picked up, Santiago offered to clean the crystal in the windows in exchange for something to eat. The merchant, seeing the desperation in the boy's eyes, agreed. Santiago worked with a focused intensity, polishing the glassware until it sparkled, arranging it in a way that caught the light. For the first time since arriving in Tangier, he felt a sliver of control. The next day, he returned and offered to clean all the crystal in the shop. As he worked, he noticed things. The shop was on a hill, but its door was at the top, forcing customers to climb. He suggested moving the displays outside to attract passers-by. The merchant was resistant. "This is how things have always been," he said. "Crystal is a fragile business. People are afraid to touch it. And besides, this is what I'm used to." Santiago realized he was working for a man who had surrendered his own personal legend. The crystal merchant had once dreamed of making a pilgrimage to Mecca, but he had never gone. He feared that if he achieved his dream, he would have nothing left to live for. So he kept his dream as a distant hope, a reason to get through each day, but never as a destination. This was a new kind of omen for Santiago. He saw the ghost of his own future if he gave up now. He began to propose more changes. He built a display case outside, which attracted customers. He suggested selling tea in crystal glasses, so people could experience the beauty of the product without the fear of breaking it. The merchants, slowly and reluctantly, agreed to each innovation. The business began to flourish. Santiago worked there for almost a year. He learned the language, the customs, and saved every coin he earned. He was accumulating a new flock, not of sheep, but of money. He could buy a larger flock than before and return to Spain, a wealthy man. The call of the pyramids grew fainter, a childish fantasy replaced by the solid reality of financial security. One day, he saw a vision of his old life, the fields, the ship end, felt a deep longing. But then he saw the image of Melchizedek, who seemed to say, "Finish what you started." He went for a walk and sat on a stone, using Urim and Thummim to seek an answer. The answer came not from the stones, but from a sudden, clear understanding. He was not the same boy who had left Spain. He had crossed a desert, learned a new language, and revived a failing business. The boy who had been terrified in this very market a year ago was gone. He had been tempered by fire. He returned to the crystal merchant and told him he was leaving. He was going to join a caravan crossing the Sahara Desert to Egypt. The merchant was sad to see him go, but understood. "I am proud of you," he said. "You brought my shop prosperity, and you reminded me of a dream I had long buried. Perhaps one day I will go to Mecca." "You should," Santiago said. The merchant smiled a weary smile. "I am afraid that if I go, I will have no reason to go on living. But you are pursuing your personal legend. You must know that I am not going to Mecca for the same reason that you are going to the pyramids. It is the hope that sustains us." Santiago understood the difference. For the merchant, the dream was a hope. For him, it was a necessity. He had learned a crucial lesson in this shop on the hill. The fear of failure is worse than failure itself. Failure is a moment. The fear of it is a lifetime. And that the universe only helps those who are moving, not those who are standing still, polishing the same crystal day after day. He bought a place in the caravan. As the camels lurched into motion, carrying him away from the safety of Tangier and into the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Sahara, he felt a familiar thrill. He was moving again. He was back on the path to his treasure. And this time, he was armed not just with money, but with a newfound resilience. The desert awaited, and with it, the next, most profound teacher of his journey. Imagine and think, being able to listen to the silent conversation of the wind, the sand, and the stars. What secrets would they tell you? And what if the greatest danger you faced in a sea of sand was not thirst, bandits, or sunstroke, but the seductive whisper of love that asks you to abandon your destiny? The Sahara was a world of absolutes. The sun was a tyrant, the night a freezing abyss, and the silence was a presence so immense it felt like a physical weight. The caravan was a slow-moving island of life in an ocean of sand, a microcosm of human hopes and fears. Santiago kept to himself for the first few days, observing. He saw the seasoned camel drivers, their faces etched by sun and wind, who moved with an economy of motion that spoke of a deep understanding of the desert. He saw the other travelers, merchants, pilgrims, soldiers, and then he saw the Englishman. The Englishman was a peculiar sight, hunched over a pile of books, muttering to himself. He was a student of chemistry, religion, and, most importantly, alchemy. He had spent his entire fortune and risked his life to cross the desert to find a legendary alchemist who was said to live at the Alfamo oasis, a man who could turn any metal into gold and who held the secrets of the universe. Santiago was fascinated. Here was another man chasing a personal legend, though his was pursued through books and formulas. The Englishman, in turn, was dismissive of Santiago's story of dreams and omens. For him, truth was found in complex texts and laboratory equipment, which he had foolishly dragged across the desert. The Philosopher's Stone and the elixir of life, the Englishman explained one evening by the fire. That is the goal of alchemy. The stone can lead to gold, and the elixir can cure all ills and grant immortality. But isn't alchemy about more than that? Santiago asked, thinking of Melchizedek's words about the soul of the world. The Englishman scoffed. It is a precise science. One must follow the formulas, decode the encrypted texts. It is not about reading omens in the flight of a hawk. They were two seekers on the same path, one trying to learn the language of the world through intuition, the other through intellect. The Englishman lent Santiago some of his books, but the boy found them incomprehensible and contradictory. They spoke of the emerald tablet, the metal of the soul, and the masterwork, but it was all abstract and cold. One night, frustrated, Santiago looked up at the infinite canopy of stars. He remembered what the old gypsy and Melchizedek had said about the language of the world. He closed his eyes and tried to listen. He heard the crackle of the fire, the snorting of the camels, the wind sighing over the dunes, and in that symphony of the desert, he felt a connection, a silent communication that the Englishman's books could never capture. He was learning to listen with his heart. The caravan finally reached the Alfayum oasis, a shock of green and blue in the monochrome desert. It was a paradise, with thousands of date palms, freshwater springs, and white tents. It was also a place of refuge, as tribal wars raged in the desert, making travel beyond the oasis impossible. Santiago and the Englishman parted ways. The Englishman desperate to find his alchemist. Santiago, with time on his hands, wandered the oasis, and then, at the well, he saw her. Her name was Fatima, and she was a desert woman. When she drew water, it was as if she were performing a sacred dance. Her eyes, dark and deep, held the mystery of the desert wells. The moment Santiago saw her, the world seemed to stop. The pyramids, the treasure, his personal legend, all of it faded into a distant hum. In that instant, he understood the true meaning of love. A love that required no words. A love that was as immediate and undeniable as the sunrise. He spoke to her every day. He learned that for desert people, love was not a reason to hold someone back, but a reason to let them go. I am a desert woman, Fatima said. I know about the caravans, departures, and I have seen how the men go and return. But the dunes are changed by the wind, and the men are changed by their journey. I want my man to wander, and I want him to return to me because it is me he wants to return to, not because I have asked it of him. Her love was not possessive. It was as free as the hawk that circled overhead. She told him she would wait for him, no matter how long it took. This love was a new kind of treasure, one that made the gold he sought seem dull and lifeless. A fierce internal war erupted within him. Should he abandon his quest, stay at the oasis with Fatima, and live a life of simple, profound happiness? Was this his true destiny? It was the ultimate test. The universe had presented him with the siren's call, a beautiful, valid reason to give up his dream. He was tormented. It was in this state of turmoil that he decided to use the omen reading skills he had been practicing. He climbed a high cliff overlooking the oasis and scanned the horizon. He saw the endless sand, the tents, the palm trees, and two hawks fighting in the sky. As he watched their deadly dance, a vision flashed in his mind, swift and terrifying. Hisoa and Armi mounted on powerful horses, descending upon the oasis. They carried swords, and their intent was destruction. The vision was so powerful, so real, that he knew it was a true omen. He had a choice: to ignore it and stay with his personal concerns, or to act on it and risk everything. He went directly to the oasis's tribal chief. It was a bold, dangerous move. A foreigner claiming to have a vision could be seen as a madman or a spy, but he spoke with such conviction, describing the details of the army and the route they would take, that the chief, a severe and wise man, listened. The chief was silent for a long time. Then he said, "The desert takes our men and sometimes does not return them. We know about omens. We will prepare for war." The next day, the oasis was a flurry of activity. Women and children were hidden, and the men took up arms, concealing themselves among the palm trees and rocks. Santiago waited, his heart in his throat. Had he been wrong? Had he hallucinated from the stress of his decision? Then, as the sun began to set, a cloud of dust appeared on the horizon. It grew larger, resolving into the shapes of warriors on horseback, exactly as he had seen. As they charged into the oasis, they were ambushed. The battle was short and fierce. The men of the oasis, prepared and fighting for their homes, defeated the invaders. Santiago was a hero. He had saved the oasis. The next morning, a majestic figure on a white horse approached Santiago's tent. The man wore a black headdress, and his eyes held the fire of the sun. He was the alchemist. "You have learned to read the omens," the alchemist said, his voice calm yet powerful. "And now you are torn. You have found love, and you think it is a reason to stop." Santiago confessed his turmoil. "I have found a treasure here already. Why should I continue?" The alchemist led him to a patch of dry ground and pointed to a scarab beetle, struggling to push a drop of dew through the sand. "Life attracts life," he said. Then he gave Santiago the most important lesson yet. Love never keeps a man from pursuing his personal legend. If he abandons that pursuit, it's because it wasn't a true love, a love that speaks the language of the world. He told Santiago that Fatima understood this, for she was a woman of the desert, and the desert knew that life was in the movement, the journey. To stay now would be to betray both his love and his destiny. "You must go to the pyramids," the alchemist said, "and I will accompany you. The final leg of your journey is the most dangerous. You must cross the territory of the warring tribes. But if you are to reach your treasure, you must also face the greatest challenge of all. You must confront your own heart and learn to listen to it above all other voices, even the voice of fear." Santiago looked at Fatima one more time. She smiled at him, a smile of encouragement and unwavering faith. "I am a desert woman," she repeated. "I am proud that my man is sought by the forces of destiny." With the alchemist by his side, and the image of Fatima's love in his heart, not as a chain, but as a guiding star, Santiago prepared to leave the safety of the oasis. He was about to enter the final crucible, where he would learn the ultimate language, the language of his own soul. Ever you think, what is the one thing more valuable than gold? It is the power to transform yourself, to turn the lead of your fears into the gold of your courage. But this transformation requires a test of fire. Are you willing to bet your life on the voice of your own heart? The desert beyond the oasis was a landscape of pure danger. The alchemist moved with an unnerving silence, his senses attuned to every shift in the wind, every shadow on the dune. He was a living embodiment of the desert itself, austere, powerful, and unforgiving. He began to teach Santiago the final lessons, not from books, but from the world around them. Everything on earth is being continuously transformed because the earth is alive, the alchemist said. It has a soul. We are part of that soul. The alchemist's mission is to penetrate to the soul of the world, to discover the spiritual language that unites all creation. This is the masterwork. Turning lead into gold is merely a consequence of understanding that language. He taught Santiago that love is the transformative force that binds the universe. When we love, we always strive to become better than we are. When we strive to become better than we are, everything around us becomes better, too. They rode for days, their progress a silent meditation. The alchemist pushed Santiago to listen to his heart, even when it was afraid. Tell your heart that the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself, the alchemist advised, and that no heart has ever suffered when it goes in search of its dreams. Because every second of the search is a second's encounter with God and with eternity. Santiago began a difficult dialogue with his own heart. At first, it was full of fear of losing Fatima, fear of death in the desert, fear of finding nothing at the pyramids. But as he listened, without judgment, his heart began to speak of its joys, its passions, its excitement for the adventure. He realized his heart had been a prisoner of his fears, and he was now setting it free. The alchemist called this the world's greatest lie, that at a certain point in our lives, we lose control of what's happening to us, and our lives become controlled by fate. Their journey was abruptly halted. A band of armed tribesmen, their faces hard and suspicious, surrounded them. They were searched, and in the alchemist's possession, they found a small, heavy vial containing the philosopher's stone, and a curved yellow glass egged the elixir of life. The leader of the tribesmen, a man with a cruel scar across his face, demanded to know what they were. The alchemist, with stunning audacity, looked the man in the eye and said, "I am an alchemist. I have the power to destroy this entire camp with the power of the wind. This boy," he pointed to Santiago, "has learned this power from me. He will turn himself into the wind in 3 days' time to prove it." Santiago's blood ran cold. It was a death sentence. The tribesmen laughed, but the alchemist's confidence was unshakable. He offered their own lives as a wager. If Santiago failed, the tribesmen could have all their gold. If he succeeded, they would let them go and provide an escort to the pyramids. The chief, intrigued by this madness, agreed. For 3 days, Santiago was a prisoner, paralyzed with terror. He begged the alchemist to tell him how to turn himself into the wind. "I have no idea how to do it," the alchemist said calmly. "But you must. It is the only way to prove that you have penetrated the soul of the world. If you don't, you will die. But you will die in the pursuit of your personal legend. And for that, at least, your heart is clean." This was the ultimate test. It was no longer about finding treasure. It was about becoming the treasure. He had to perform a miracle, not through trickery, but through a genuine, profound connection to the universe. On the 3rd day, he was led to a cliff edge, the wind whipping at his clothes. The entire camp had gathered to watch the foreigner die. Santiago closed his eyes. He was utterly alone. He could not rely on the alchemist, on his books, on his sheep. He could only rely on what he had learned. He began to speak to the wind. He asked for its help. The wind, arrogant and free, laughed at him. "I cannot help you. I don't know how to turn a man into the wind." He then spoke to the sun, a being of immense power and logic. "I have known love," Santiago said to the sun, "and I know that love is what can transform anything." The sun, though powerful, was also limited. "Tell me about love," it said. But Santiago could not. It was a knowledge of the heart, not of the intellect. In a final, desperate act of faith, he spoke to the hand that wrote it all. He did not ask to be turned into the wind. Instead, he communicated without words, using the language of the world. He expressed his unity with the desert, with the wind, with the sun, with Fatima. He saw that he was not a boy separate from the universe, but a vital part of its soul. He was the sand, the hawk, the water in the well. In that moment of supreme connection, a miracle occurred. The wind roared, not in resistance, but in collaboration. It understood his soul. It swept him up, not destroying him, but becoming one with him. He felt himself dissolve and expand, his consciousness merging with the vastness of the sky. He was the wind. He could feel the terror and awe of the tribesmen below as the sandstorm whipped around them, touching them but not harming them. When the wind died down, Santiago was standing on the other side of the camp, whole and unharmed. The tribesmen fell to their knees in reverence. They provided him and the alchemist with a swift escort to the pyramids. The chief, before they left, gave Santiago a bag of gold. "You have proven the power of your God," he said. As they rode, the alchemist looked at Santiago with a new respect. "You succeeded where most alchemists fail," he said. "You mastered the language of the world. You will now find your treasure. My task is done." They reached a Coptic monastery near the pyramids. There, in a final act of teaching, the alchemist used the philosopher's stone to turn a piece of lead into gold. He divided it into 4 parts. One he gave to the monk of the monastery, one he kept for himself, one he gave to Santiago, and the last, he said, was for Santiago to give to the one he saw fit. Then he left. Santiago was alone again. But this time, he was not the boy who had been robbed he was a man who had conversed with the wind. He held a piece of gold, proof of his transformation. The final step of his journey was before him. The treasure is where your heart is just feel. You have crossed a continent, survived the desert, turned yourself into the wind, and stand at the foot of your dream. But what if the treasure was never at the destination you sought? What if the real secret is that the treasure has been with you all along, waiting for you to become the person worthy of finding it? The pyramids of Giza stood before him, immense, ancient, and silent under the moonlight. They were exactly as they had appeared in his dream. A profound sense of accomplishment washed over him. He had done it. He had followed the omens, overcome every obstacle, and remained faithful to his personal legend. He fell to his knees and wept, not just from joy, but from the sheer magnitude of the journey. He thanked God for the guidance, for Melchizedek, for the crystal merchant, for the Englishman, for Fatima, and for the alchemist. Then, remembering the child in his dream, he began to dig at the base of the pyramid where he felt the omen was strongest. He dug with the piece of gold in his pocket, with the strength of a man who had turned into the wind. He dug through the night, his hands bleeding, his muscles screaming. Just as the first light of dawn tinged the horizon, his shovel hit something hard. His heart soared. The treasure. He scraped away the sand and found a wooden chest bound with iron. This was it, the fulfillment of his destiny. But as he pried the lid open, a voice shouted behind him, "What are you doing there?" He turned to see several rough-looking men. They were thieves, drawn by the sight of a lone man digging in a place rumored to have hidden treasures. They dragged him out of the hole and beat him, demanding to know what he was hiding. Desperate, Santiago told them the truth. He told them about his dream, about the treasure buried at the base of the pyramids. He thought the sheer absurdity of his story might save him. The leader of the thieves burst into laughter. "You are a fool," he said, kicking sand into the hole. "I am not going to waste my time on a dreamer. 2 years ago, right here on this very spot, I had a recurring dream myself. I dreamed I should travel to the fields of Spain and look for a ruined church where a sycamore tree grows through the roof. There," the dream said, "I would find a hidden treasure, but I am not so stupid as to cross an entire desert for a dream." He gave Santiago one last kick and left him there, bruised and bleeding, the empty hole mocking him. Santiago lay in the sand, the thief's words echoing in his mind. A ruined church, ... a sycamore tree. It was his sycamore tree, the place where he had slept with his sheep, where he had had the dream that started it all. He began to laugh, a laugh that started deep in his soul and erupted into the morning air. He laughed until tears streamed down his face, mixing with the blood and sand. The universe had played the most beautiful, cosmic joke on him. The treasure was not here at the pyramids. It was back home, in the very place he had started. But in that moment of stunning revelation, he understood everything. If he had not journeyed to the pyramids, he would never have known. The treasure was not just the chest under the sycamore tree. The real treasure was the journey itself. It was the man he had become. It was the wisdom to listen to his heart, to read the omens, to understand the language of the world, and to experience a love that was as vast as the desert. The gold and jewels were just a symbol. He looked at the majestic pyramids, not with disappointment, but with gratitude. They were the catalyst, the beautiful, distant goal that had forced him to grow. They had led him to Fatima, to the alchemist, to his own soul. He stood up, brushed the sand from his clothes, and felt in his pocket for the piece of gold the alchemist had given him. He knew what to do with the fourth part. He would give it to the gypsy woman in Tarifa, as he had promised. With a light heart and a spirit full of peace, Santiago began the journey home. He was no longer a shepherd boy chasing a fantasy. He was a man who had discovered the secret of life, that the treasure is never just at the end of the road. The treasure is the road. The treasure is the transformation that happens within you when you have the courage to follow your heart. He returned to Spain, to the ruined church, and beneath the roots of the sycamore tree, he found a chest filled with ancient gold coins, precious stones and artifacts from a time long past. It was a fortune beyond his wildest dreams. But as he held a solid gold medallion in his hand, feeling its weight, he knew it was the smallest part of his reward. The true treasure was the story he now carried inside him. He had his gold, he had his love waiting for him in the desert, and he had the wisdom to know that life is a constant, glorious pursuit of a personal legend, a journey where the destination is not a place, but a new way of seeing. For Santiago now knew the secret that the alchemist had tried to teach him all along. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And his heart was no longer in one place. It was in the fields of Andalusia, the hills of Tarifa, the crystal shop of Tangier, the sands of the Sahara, the wells of Al Fahum, and the winds that blow between all the corners of the world. He had found the soul of the world, and in doing so, he had found himself. If you like this life-changing story and want to listen more stories, then subscribe the channel and like the video. Thanks for watching.